Hi everybody, this is the first video in a series of, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 by the time I'm done, that relate to exercise M2A2 in Larch 251. Since I modified this project from last year, I'm going to do a new set of videos. If you've been looking at my YouTube channel, there are some other ones there from last year, but this will precede or replace those. Now, before, a couple people were asking in class today, like, what does this thing really look like, since we're just starting from this sketch on a napkin. So I pulled this model up. This is the one I did that's at least got the landforms in there. You can see the river that we're going to drop down, create those side slopes. The central area, I haven't put a water texture on here yet, but that's going to be a pond. You can see how the retaining walls, they're level and they extend to the end of the ramps or perhaps a little past. You can adjust that as you see fit. But the ramps slope down. These are about 1.5 feet tall plus the coping on top. So each of these corners, the ramps stay level, and then the walls stay level, and then the ramps slope down to this lower level that's a little below. The other kind of lawn areas like this, were created by bending those planar forms into shape, then using the artisan plugin, well, using the soap skin and bubble to create a mesh surface, and then using artisan to mold those. So exactly how you manipulate this landform is up to you. Use your aesthetic judgment to do that. You can see when I put this one together here, I was thinking about kind of the approach view. So this kind of comes up and down and back up, kind of frames the center of that. But how you do that exactly is up to you. I've got some contours on the original drawing that make it look like there's 2 different mounds in this area. Be as creative as you like, as long as you make sure that the edges stay connected and you don't disturb those. That's fine. But this will give you at least a little overview of what we're going for here. Now, next step, I'm just going to open a new document, and this video will take you through the process of tracing these forms. Again, some of you had some troubles with this in class. It comes back to just doing really clean, simple geometry. I can't emphasize that enough. You need to look at these forms. This is something you need to learn to do as a designer. Look at the forms, reproduce them as simply as possible with the simplest, cleanest geometry. So let's walk through that. We'll start a new model here. The units you use are totally up to you. In class today, I went through to model info and I switched this to decimal feet. Precision doesn't need to be up this high. Let's set it down to 2 decimal precision and enable snapping to that. For this exercise, the intent of this is to help you see how you can use SketchUp or any other 3D modeler as an aid to design. The next exercise, we're going to bring the Healing Garden AutoCAD file in here and model it from that geometry. But I don't want you to think of 3D software as something you just use after you've done everything in AutoCAD. The design's basically done, and then you look at it in 3D. That's kind of completely counter to what 3D software should be used for. You've got this amazing tool that can visualize 3-dimensional shapes and forms, and if you only use it once you're done with your design, you're missing the whole point of 3D software, in my humble opinion. So that's what this is. You start with a quick sketch. You can just do a drawing on Bumwad, scan it in, photograph it, put it into SketchUp, and actually start looking at and testing your ideas in 3D before you go on to refine them and actually draw it up in AutoCAD. I'll leave, let's see, who is this year? This is Lisanne. Apparently she's one of the tech support people at SketchUp, but we don't really need her in right now, so sorry, Lisanne, goodbye. Let's go to the File menu and choose Import. And this is where I want you to go and find that base image. In my attempt, a little humor there of the napkin sketch that we can bring in. And the first thing we're going to do is just place it and scale it into the drawing. So I used Import. And remember, you need to select your all supported image types. If this defaults to SketchUp or AutoCAD or 3ds, whatever, you won't see your file. So make sure you switch the file type option to all supported image types. This is a PNG file, and then you just select it and choose Import. When you come in here, you click, you drag. It doesn't matter how big you make it. It will always be proportional, and I'm going to show you right now how to scale it to the real world dimensions. In order to help you with that, I included 1 dimension of this pavilion area. That's just a way to say, okay, this is a sketch. It's relatively to scale, but let's just say that's 50 feet. And this is something we can use this nifty little tape measure tool to do. I'm going to choose the tool, click on one corner, click on the other corner, and you'll notice it read out 6.48, something like that. I'm going to type, my keyboard will work here, 50 and feet, and enter. It will ask me if I want to resize the model. In this case, I do. I want to scale that line so it's equal to 50 feet in real world dimensions. And now, if I go back and check that, which I always do, there's 49.42, 67. So yeah, it's right around 50 feet. Perfect. That means this sidewalk here, that's 19 feet. It's a big sidewalk. That's okay. This here, that's 9 feet, 9.5 feet across. Now, if you're really trying to refine this perfectly, you might start setting these at specific widths. But as you can see, I didn't draw this to represent perfectly parallel edges on this. Some of these walkways get bigger and then thinner and thicker and thinner, and that's okay. Give you a little more challenge of reproducing this. The next step, just to have it as a backup copy, I'm going to make a copy of this. So I'm switching to the Move tool, Control click. I'm going to make sure I'm in the blue axis, so it's right up above it. Select it, right click, choose hide. I just did that as a backup copy, so if I need it, I've got it. Okay, so this one now is ready to go, except you'll notice it still has this thick border around the outside, and because of that, I can't really, the geometry won't connect. Before I can start drawing, the first thing I need to do is right click and choose explode. So I see the surface now with the image on it. If you forget to do that in your drawing and you see all these heavy profile lines, it's because you haven't exploded this image yet. This part's really critical. If you had trouble with this today and the other plugins didn't work, the soap skin didn't work, you're probably better off redoing this part. For two reasons. One, you'll learn to do it the right way, and two, the geometry is going to be so much better. So when you're drawing this, okay, you really need to think about what you're doing. It's not just about grabbing a tool and clicking wherever to hope it works. This line doesn't match. These things are kind of sketchy. That's all right. But if you look at this basic curve, there's an arc from here to somewhere in here, right? There's another arc almost that goes around to here. There's another arc there. There's another arc there. So I'm saying one, ideally it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 arcs. That's it. Not like 50 things and 50 arcs, 50 lines. We just want 6 arcs. Now I may not be able to do it in 6 and get that close. I might need a couple short line tangent segments in there, but let's see what we can do. So before you start drawing this, really look at it. Now in class, I started from the outside because that's my approach that I usually take, because I like to break it down from the outside to the inside. After I did, however, I realized there's probably a more efficient way to do that, since I have these parallel embankments. Now they're not exactly even, right? This one's a little thicker over here than this one is, but I could draw the two inside lines and then offset that surface, both of those at the same time, and get the other one. But I'll do it the same way I did in class, just to show you. You don't want to start trying to create surfaces from the middle of this existing surface. SketchUp just doesn't work that way. It wants to understand how geometry is connected to edges. So if I start from here and go to here, then I can offset, do the next one, then the next one here, and the next one. Then I start back on the outside over here and do this one, and then come back in and do the outside here, and then work my way in. That is the best way to do this. If you do it any other way, you're going to get mixed results. It's understanding how SketchUp creates surfaces. If you understand that and you work with it, I've done this at least 5 times and haven't had any trouble any of the times. Could probably put this together. Well, you'll see. I'm going to do this in real time. So whether it's boring or not, I'm going to go through it. The tool of choice is the 2-point arc tool. I'm going to make sure I snap right to the edge. I'm going to come over here to about where I feel that first arc is and put that in there. Now I'm going to pull this second one. Remember I said ideally I could do 2 arcs. Now how you position your cursor and your view is also important. So that's a little off. If I want to get closer to that, and you can see this one's still a little off, so maybe I'll have a shorter tangent in there. Again, I'm going to make sure I zoom in and snap right to the edge. Okay, so these are still kind of moving off. Now for this exercise, that's fine. I don't really care, but I'm going to back up and show you how to make this a little bit better. You can see how I'm moving off the line. This trajectory is heading out this direction, and that's not really what I want. So I am actually going to delete that one, start again, and maybe I'll back up a little more. There we go. So now that one, and the other technique is, one, zoom in. You must connect to this endpoint. If you're doing this from out here and you connect to that endpoint, it may look right, but what you're going to end up with is this little segment in here, and it's not going to work right. So zoom in, make sure you're at the very end of that point, then zoom out so you can see what you're doing. And now you can see I'm actually really right on that line. So by adding that one little point, now what I just did is what you don't want to do. I should have just double clicked there. Now I can move this back and snap it and click again. But if you have that cyan prompt, just double click and you're done. So I cut the corner off, fine. If you want that more closely connected, then I have to come up here, get that one. That one, that looks pretty good. And then get that one. So again, I think this one, I'm just going to cut it off. I don't care if that's off a little bit there. And then I'm going to snap right to the edge. So I just created that. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. Short one, no, that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 arcs in there. Once you complete that, click on the surface. If that's separated, then you know you're good to go. Don't start drawing the next line until you're sure that has created a surface, because if it doesn't, the next one's not going to work either, and then the next one isn't going to work, and then it's going to be so complicated to figure out why it doesn't work. You need to make sure each surface gets separated as you do it. Now this morning in class, I don't know what was going on. I'll try this again. I'm just going to use an offset. So I dragged over this and selected it. Click on the tool. It should stay selected, allow you to pull that over, and then I'll need to come in. I think the reason, oops, that wasn't very good. You get that magenta prompt there. The reason it wasn't working in class today, and then get rid of that little piece at the end too. The reason it wasn't working for you is because you didn't have simple, good, clean geometry. You had all these little pieces that weren't connected or overlapping, and it creates a situation that is impossible for SketchUp to offset because of the way it's folding backwards on itself and everything else. If you have good geometry, it should work. If it's not working, it's because you have bad geometry. And as I said, if it's that bad, then just do it over. You can see this isn't taking me very long to do this. You're watching in real time. So let's do the next one. I'm going to start here. I can see maybe to that point. Zoom in. I'm going to zoom in, make sure I get the end point. Now this one wants to be a little shorter and get the end point. And if you do it, if you spend a little time to get that to work, then the rest of these are going to fall together pretty nicely. Okay, maybe a little more that way and this way. The key is to make sure that when you start this, so for this one to get back on, I'm going to go a little shorter, and then I'm going to be able to come back around here and get back on my path. Again, I don't care if you follow that line exactly. Just make sure now I check. Yes, that's a face. 1, 2, 3 faces, right? Now that I have this line, I'm going to rotate it back up again so I can select it, come down across all this. I'm going to hold the control key, select the rest of this, shift control, drag right to left, that only deselects. Okay, I don't know why that's not deselecting, but I'll click on them individually. All right, so I've got that line that I created, offset tool, pull it over, done. Now this one's not closed, right? That's because I have a little gap here. And once I close that gap, That's done. That end is always short. This end always has a little piece left over, which I'm going to delete just to be clean, have clean geometry. Okay, so I've already got those sections done. Now I'm going to go through, let's work through this section, starting at the edge. Maybe there. I'm pulling around, I'm zooming in, make sure. Now the one thing I didn't do, which I mentioned in class that I probably should have done, and I'll do it now when I pick the arc tool. I'm only using 12 sides, so I'm going to set this up to 40 sides just to make it a lot smoother. So I should have done that first, but I'm not going to go back and redo that. Okay, around the end. Now I've got this little kind of small section here, endpoint, wrap it around, endpoint, and right to where this line is. I want to make sure that the ramp is built by a single arc. So I go from there to there. The rest of these you can adjust, but on the ramps, you can snap right to the very end. I don't want to go too far on this one because I want to get this long. If I can get this okay, now that's kind of pulling off farther than I want. So I'm going to get rid of that one. This one's worth just redoing a little bit to make sure it's going to work better. Okay, now this one, I'm going to pull that into there, pull that into right there. Once again, I'm ending right at the bottom of that ramp, and then I'm going to have another arc that goes from the bottom to the top, always. Zoom in, make sure I'm right at the very end point. If I can pull this out here, now with that line I can pull this all the way around. I'm trying to get the longest arcs I can get and still stay close to the line. If I can't do it, then pull back a little bit, double click. You see how me just changing my point of view changes the direction that arc is snapping. So I come back here and now I've got that broken out. So I have these sections done. I've got that one done. And the next one I probably will do is I will separate this piece. So I'm going to start, for consistency, I'm going to start at this end. And I'm going to come around here. Now, since I know I have this circle in the center there, I'm just going to get as perpendicular to that as possible. And this is another one. I want to choose the circle tool and set that up to 50 sides. I want that to be nice and smooth. Okay, so I've got that dropped in there. Now I'll go back to my arc, and that gives me something to connect to when I get there. Again, kind of pulling out into here. So if you keep doing this very systematically, make sure you snap to the end. It's all going to connect. If you do this being way zoomed out, I realize that once you start drawing certain things, you want to zoom out so you can see what you're doing, right? That's fine. Just make sure when you start, you connect there. It'll save you so much time in the long run. Okay, oops. Double click, come back around here, maybe even just pull that all the way around, tangent at vertex, and select it. Now it's not separating this off yet, right, because I haven't gone all the way across. So I'm going to start back here on my circle, get my arc tool back, make sure I'm at the end point. And that's kind of forcing me out there. So I'm going to escape out of that, move back a little more, and grab that one. So again, double click here. This is one I might actually use the line tool for because it's pretty straight. Again, just snapping top of the ramp, switch to the arc tool. And keep going along here. Always to the end point. Always trying to get as close as I can, and then using the double click to reinforce that. And if you do that, you're going to have as few as arcs as possible. And all the geometry is going to work. So maybe from here, yeah, I can come all the way over to here, double click, grab that endpoint up to the very top of the ramp, double click there. It's always what you want to do. You want to have that single arc along the top of the ramp. Okay, that one I'm just going to round off a bit. And since it kind of rubber bands out there and you can preview it, just stretch it out there. Okay, and there you go. Again, if you use that method, make sure you snap to the corners, use as few as lines as possible. It's going to fit together. It works every single time. If you don't do that, you're going to be extremely frustrated and you will swear that SketchUp doesn't work right. But it works perfectly well if you know how to use it the right way. Okay, so the next part, let's see, maybe again, I'll work my way from the outside here just to say, I know I can connect to the edge here and then I'll get into the interior. So I'm going to start with my arc again. Move from there. And I'm always changing my view a little bit to try and keep the arc going the way I want it to. It really does make a difference. If you try and do this from the same position every time, you're not going to be able to get the arc to go where you want it to be. Now when you get to here, double click, switch to the line tool, draw a line across to there, go back to your arc, and start your arc again off of that. We want this to be closed in because it represents the, the sidewalk paving, and we want to be able to apply a consistent material to that. Okay, that one went a little far, so I'm going to delete that one out of there. I can do better. So I just want to make sure I'm more like that, and then I can bring this in right there. Switch to the line tool, draw across to there, back to the arc. Back to the endpoint, around the corner. So as you're doing this, really pay attention to the geometry. You can see what direction that endpoint is pointing, whether it's sending you off in the right direction or whether it's going to bend you around in another way that you don't really want the line to go. So I could stretch that there, but it's not going to give me the line, so I'm going to do that. I'd rather have that come in closer to a 90. Again, the line tool. I'm getting the blue axis, so I turn around, I get rid of that blue axis inference. Just switch your direction. So SketchUp is always trying to anticipate based on what kind of view you have set up in the position that the information is on the screen. So it's not irrelevant to the drawing process. Your point of view is absolutely relevant. over to there, done. Okay, now you can see that that's been cut off from that too. I always like working in from the outside edges where you can. Once I have everything connected to the outside edges, then you can come back in here and start breaking it down in the center. So I'll start with this one. I'm just going to start maybe this arc over here. So instead of using, this is the longest, biggest arc. It's the main part of the sidewalk. You can see the retaining wall down here is more undulating. So instead of starting down here and trying to piece this together, just start with one big arc there. And then you can work through the rest of this and get it to fit. But at least that one, the one major arc that's going to be the most visible along the sidewalk, you've got consistent. So that one, I'm not sure if I got the end, so I'm going to move out. Okay, so you can see this really is not that difficult to do. You just have to look at those arcs a little bit and anticipate the next direction. So this one's pulling that around. So if I didn't want that to happen, I probably need to change this one a bit. And one way to do that would be to come back through here, kind of establish that line that I want there. Establish that, delete this one out of here, and then go back. Oops, that did not hit the end point. And put that in there to make that fit, even if it's off the line a bit. And then finally, I'm back to here. Now also I can look at this and say, all right, that's not really a very smooth line, right? Or a joint right there. So what do I do about that? Well, if you're careful, you can come in here, get that endpoint, bring that around, and then just delete that piece. But you want to be careful. You don't want to get any little leftover lines in there. That's going to be a problem. But you see now, because I've systematically done this, that's separated from the rest of the walkway. I haven't had to do anything over. Everything's connected. There's no stray lines. It's nice and smooth. You can see everything fits together really well. I really just have this last piece here and that, which I'll finish off. If you've got the point, you can quit watching. But again, here I've got kind of a big arc. So I'm going to start with that one and then come around. Right around to the end. Come right off of that. This is another one where I really want to have one big long arc in here. And come right around to there. Right around to here. So there's another situation where the way that last arc that I drew, it's kind of kicking this to bulge out the other way. So I'm just going to go back. I'm going to get rid of that one. I'm going to redraw that a little right there. Now that's going to make that work a lot better. There we go. Change my point of view. Fix that problem. Snap to the end point. This actually looks like it wants to keep going around this way, and then okay, so that one's not going to get right there. So it's another situation where maybe I'm not. And then just get a line segment, connect that. Once again, that close that off right away, no problems, everything's fitting together. If you use that systematic approach, start from the outside, use your offsets where you can, start from the outside here, work your way in, work your way in. Now I just have this last section in here. And I'm going to finish that off by going to the end point of this arc, not you can see that that's not at the end. That's the endpoint. I have another endpoint there. Find the endpoint there. Find the endpoint there. And now that ramp should be a separate piece of geometry. Same thing over here. Find that endpoint, 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 endpoint. I don't care if that's not necessarily perpendicular. I just want that to be endpoint to endpoint. Following my own advice here. Endpoint, 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 endpoint. And by doing the ramps right now, I'm also, once again, connecting it to the outside geometry. I'm starting to isolate this. Now that center section is completely isolated, but because I've connected this to the surfaces that were already properly formed, it makes this automatically form up the right way. And then the last thing I have to do is this inside area. So I'll start with that curve. Always snapping to the endpoints. Around this arc. Oops, what did I do? Oh, I'm doing the outside. That's okay. You could do the inside of this, offset it, and then fix it. Like you'd have to correct it for this line that I'm working on right now, but I'll just keep going. I really want this to come out here. Trim that off a little bit. This is also part, recognize if this came from a sketch on a napkin over lunch, it's not perfect, right? So part of your job, what you're doing right now, is trying to make it better than it was. So if you smooth some of these things off, round it off a bit, shorten it, whatever, that's fine. All right, now I have one more to do, that center one. Once again, I'm going to start from kind of one of the bigger arcs. All right, close enough. Endpoint. Okay. All right, still going around the corner. This one I'm not going to worry so much about in terms of the perfect form. Change my position a bit. Since I have to connect there, I'm going to back that off and then come in and connect to that. Okay, so there you go. I don't know how many minutes that was, but you'll be able to tell when you look at the video. Everything has been completely separated. No problems with stray lines, no problems with complicated geometry. Everything just fits together. That's all the longer it should take you to put this together. So the next one, I will go through the process of grouping this up, starting to do the manipulation of the landforms, and show you how to use the artisan, the soap skin and bubble, and the artisan plugin to start manipulating the landforms. And then the third one will be about dropping this center section and actually adding the retaining walls in and the methods that we use to do that.